Hi everyone, welcome back to the Mixology Talk podcast. This is episode number 175, and boy, things are different. This is not the podcast that we had planned for this month. We had a whole different idea about the podcast for the month of April, but with COVID-19 changing everything around every possible aspect of life, we decided that it would be a little bit better to pivot and to have a different topic. So today we're going to be focusing on to-go cocktails. It's a brand new thing that some states are able to offer. So definitely check with your own local laws about if you're able to offer this if you're a bar or restaurant. But we have Chris Elford joining us from Navy Strength, an award-winning bar in Seattle, and he's going to discuss a lot of the details about his to-go program. Definitely a lot of takeaways from this conversation, and not all of them are obvious. So you definitely want to stay tuned for that. So here it is, and I hope you all are staying safe and healthy. Hey everyone, welcome back to Mixology Talk podcast. So this is our first episode that we've done since COVID-19 has kind of exploded internationally and within the United States as well. So we thought we'd kind of shift some of our regular programming and podcasting to really focus on how to help people in this kind of environment that we're in. So today I'm very fortunate to have somebody that's really knowledgeable about to-go cocktails and the new to-go cocktail program here to share his experience. So Chris Elford from, I believe it's Navy Strength in Seattle, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Welcome to the podcast, man. Thanks for joining us.
Glad to be here.
Yeah. So the reason I even came across this particular subject with you, I'm having a hard time talking today, was because of a Facebook post that you put out, kind of sharing some of your experiences that you and your bar program have had under kind of the new regulations and new laws around offering to-go cocktails.
Yeah. It's a subject that it's new, and one of the reasons that it's hard to talk about it sometimes is that when it's a new subject, there isn't like a lot of shared language and shared terminology. None of us have really gone to any seminars on this. None of our idols have written a book on it yet, and so we're all just kind of like figuring it out. But I've been thinking about the to-go cocktail thing for a while because our friend Chris Lauder, who used to bartend with me at Amoria Margot in New York back in the day, he's in China now, and he was posting kind of some anecdotal stories of people who are doing it in China. And so I had read that kind of a few months ahead of time, and just saw some successes and failures, and started thinking about, if we have to do this, like, what are we going to do? How are we going to do it? So that kind of informed things. And then the rest of it was kind of just my own curiosity and entrepreneurial mindset. And also the fight or flight aspect of the whole thing, where it's like, I want to do everything I can for my staff because I care about them so much and I want them to be okay. And these cocktail kits are something that we split the proceeds with our staff. So it's, hopefully when this is all over, the lights are still going to be on at Navy Strength, and hopefully our bartenders are going to be able to at least, keep their insurance going, pay some bills, whatever it is through this. So,
yeah. And so some of the things that you talked about was the success and failures that you saw from the China market when you were having a conversation with Chris Lauder and kind of putting your eyes on this scenario as it unfolded. What were some of the successes and failures that you kind of gleaned from other people's experiences?
Well, I mean, I think that it's easier to talk about the failures, but you learn more from that side of things. So it sounded like the failures from what I had gleaned from these articles was, even if you are successful and even if people are interested in what you're doing, it's going to be a very minimal amount of income, compared to what your bar might be used to. That's just the way it is, in any market. And I mean, this one article in particular, the guy was saying basically, like, even though we have been like the most successful in our city and doing this, it'll keep us afloat for maybe a month. You know what I mean? So I kind of came in with like, I think realistic expectations. You know, the successes I saw were kind of like maybe a little bit more on the packaging side and how to get people an experience that is like digestible in the retail sense.
Sure.
Uniquely in bars and restaurants, we have the only kind of business where when someone walks into our place, when they open the door and step inside, they are buying something, period. Right. You know, like that doesn't exist in the retail world. People have so many options. They have so many different, you know, routes they can go to arrive at the same spot. And so, you know, basically where that took my mind was our kit needs to be unable to be reproduced without us kind of like doing this. It needs to include everything, including like some special things. So like, for example, garnishes, like going beyond kind of just sort of your basic twists and maybe doing some things that are a little bit more specified, whether it just be some really clean, beautiful mint sprigs or a dehydrated garnish of some kind. I think those things add a lot of value, but just trying to like create something that people view as worth buying, because someone can go to the store and buy booze, you know what I mean? Like and they can go buy some lemons and juice those. So it's like, we have to create something for them that's special, you know, and that's worth talking about. So, and I always say, you know, in our bars or kind of when I'm talking to people who are interested in opening their own bars, I always say that having a focus isn't the same as having a narrative. And I think that if you're kind of branching out in something like this, like cocktail kits, you have to have a narrative of some kind, like a story that people can tell as they walk away from your experience.
Absolutely. And this is something that we can absolutely manage in bars, in our bar programs, when we're face to face with our customers. But I can only imagine that's a kind of a much more intense scenario to try to figure out once you're kind of doing these prepackaged cocktails and wrapping this all stuff where you're not going to get that same interaction across the bar that you would normally have. Yeah. So it must be a significant challenge for you guys.
It is. I mean, we do it. So like the social aspect of it is a unique part of it. And for us, like we really try to, we try to kind of compartmentalize what it is that people like about going to bars and interacting with bartenders and giving them a little bit of that. So for example, our instruction sheet that comes with our cocktail kits, we spend a lot of time on those and a lot of time kind of like putting those in our voice, giving people some like actionable information and kind of tips, making it friendly, well worded, you know, succinct, but thorough. And our idea is if someone comes away from this being like, oh, I never knew that was how you like made a cocktail like that, that's really valuable. And now like we're kind of equipping them to be an expert, which I think is something that the best bartenders do. And then another thing that we're doing is like when people come and pick up the kits, we're saying, hey, if you post about this on social media, will you just tag us and we'll repost your drinks? And it's such a simple thing. We have gotten so much interaction from it. We're reaching new people that the bar has never reached before through it. I mean, we're getting like, you know, 50 to 100 new followers every week or two now, which is huge.
Well, that's a whole marketing component that never probably existed before this. And it comes from us. Yeah. And it comes from us just being like genuinely interested. I always tell people when they come and pick up the kits, like, I want to see your glassware. I want to see what you're putting this in. You know what I mean? And some people tag us and they put it in a coffee mug, and some people have these like dope ass tiki mugs and everything in between, you know? Oh, that's amazing. That's so cool. So it sounds like when you're thinking about the packaging and you're thinking about offering this product out for a to-go side, it really is an extension of the customer experience that you're trying to deliver once they walk in the door. You want to create that excitement. You want to give them all the equipment they're going to need and kind of the backstory and all the things that they need to have a similar experience to you, to being there, but on their own terms and in the safety of their own home.
Yep.
No, that's pretty cool. That's great.
100%.
Very cool. So I want to kind of pick your brain on the cocktail kit here in a second, because I think that's really interesting. But I kind of want to start from the beginning. Like, you saw this coming down the pipeline. You already knew it was coming and hitting, and you're preparing yourself and your staff for when this thing was going to become big in the United States. How did you learn the first time that this was a possibility for your business? Because this is fairly new to offer cocktails to go, correct?
Yes, it is. And actually, the governor of Washington, and one of the things that's hard about talking about this is it's all state to state regulations, right? I mean, some states are still kind of like almost denying that anything's going on. Some states aren't getting hit very hard. Some states are getting hit extremely hard. And everyone's kind of like, going their own route as far as what laws are in place and what laws they're relaxing to make this possible. So it's another thing that makes it a little bit difficult to talk about. But essentially, one, just having a friend who lives in China who's posting about this and seeing what's coming down the pipeline. And he was kind of like, Chris Lauder was posting things like, hey, America, you need to take this seriously, like writing these really heartfelt posts that said, things like, hey, to all of my, brothers and sisters in America, like this is happening. And you can't read something like that and not process it.
Right.
When the governor announced that Washington state could sell bottles of spirits legally, that bars could, we had already been doing the cocktail kits up to that point without booze. We had our mixes together. So Navy Strength is like a tropical cocktail bar. Our drinks are very ingredients driven. They're very kind of creative and have lots of esoteric kind of cheeky fringes to them. They're all travel inspired. So they have like some kind of root in some unique culture or place. And for that reason, like our drinks are pretty suited for putting into non-alcoholic kits. Like we have, unique juices, we have unique syrups that we make, unique kind of like spices and things. And we throw those all together. And when we write our cocktail kits without booze, which we still sell them without booze too. When we write the instructions, we list what spirits we make the drink with at the bar. And then we list every spirit that we think that you could make the drink with.
Oh, cool.
You know what I mean? So it's not just like, hey, you have to have a bottle of Ray and Nephew.
Right.
It's like we make it with Ray and Nephew. It's really good that way. You could use any Jamaican rum. You could use any rum. It might be good with Sotol. It might be good with Mezcal. It might be good with dry gin. It might be good with, whatever, Aquavit. So, we're kind of equipping people to work with what they have. And in the same way that we're trying to kind of like literally liquidate some of the things that are sitting around the bar and just collecting dust right now, we recognize that people are doing the same at home. If you have a bottle of bourbon on your back bar and money is tight, you might consider buying a non-alcoholic cocktail kit to make some bourbon cocktails, but you're probably not going to consider, buying a cocktail kit that requires you to buy a $40 bottle of tequila.
Absolutely. And I think it's a good thing to offer customers too, to your point, not everybody can afford the full-blown package, but giving you the ability to still market to them and still give them a really cool experience, that it just makes a ton of sense.
Yeah, it's working. I mean, it's seeing the failures makes me recognize our successes. You know what I mean? Sure. Like, and I've talked with, peers of mine in New York who are doing like individual cocktails to go, and everyone's saying that they're having a really hard time with it. Like, it's not bringing in enough money. They're delivering them, and, delivering someone one or two cocktails isn't really like the most cost-effective thing. For us, our cocktail kits make 10 drinks, right? So like, it's worth it for people to buy them. They get maximum enjoyment out of them. But there's minimal packaging. They have to come pick them up. So we're not, there's no delivery kind of like incursion. And I recognize in New York that that's like not the case. Everyone's kind of locked down, but I don't know. There's the financial aspect of doing kits that make 10 versus just making one individual cocktail it's working for us right now.
Absolutely. And I think that's one of the takeaways I saw from the thread that you posted, was you originally started with a couple different platforms, a couple different offerings. And you said, if I'm understanding correctly, it was 5 or 10 with cocktail. And then you experimented and said, you know what, I'm only going to offer the 10. And from what I remember, it actually sold more.
Yeah. And like, that's like when I was talking about my like personal, just like entrepreneurial spirit, I think that's like part of what I'm talking about. But, you know, a good example is back in the day when we first opened Amoria Margot, you know, that was a 13-seat bar, and we would fill up and people would walk in and they'd see that all the bar stools were taken, and then they'd walk back out and leave. So what we started doing on the weekends was taking all of the bar stools away, and it was just a standing bar. And our sales went up significantly. And now I'm pretty sure that they keep the bar stools in for like a certain amount of hours a week, just during like the happy hour kind of thing. And then they take them away every night. And for me, it's just like, you have to like get creative. And, you know, the small business world is such a cutthroat world. It's like, if you're not doing stuff like that and not kind of thinking on your feet and thinking about how you can make like smarter financial decisions for your business, you're going to sink, not swim. You know what I mean? So for us, it was like, we had the first week we did cocktail kits. First weekend we did them because we only saw them on Fridays and Saturdays. We were doing kits that made 5 drinks or kits that made 10 drinks. And the kits that made 5 drinks sold like easily twice as much as the ones that made 10 drinks. And so the next week we just took them away, when we only sold kits that made 10. And it, like, you know, no one cared. It was just like, if you give people the option, their brain you know, like their instinct is to choose. Like 5 drinks seemed like less of a gamble to these people.
Sure.
But our feedback on the kits was 100% positive. So we were like, the people that purchased a times 10 cocktail kit are every bit as happy as the people that chose the times 5. Let's just get rid of the times 5 and keep it moving. So I don't know. It sounds like it's sometimes hard to talk about stuff like this because it sounds like you're being opportunistic, but once again, you remember that you're like fighting for the livelihood of your bartenders and your bar. And Anu and I have 4 bars actually that are all like right next door to each other. And, you know, 2 of them basically are capable of doing stuff like this. Rob Roy also does cocktail kits. And then we have 2 other bars, Vinny's and No Anchor. And those kind of aren't able to do anything right now. And you know, so we're kind of seeing both sides of the coin, and it makes us grateful for what we have, you know, with Navy Strength and Rob Roy. And, you know, it makes us kind of worry about the future of the other 2, but we'll figure it out.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's impossible to have conversations about kind of what's happening in our industry now without having those hard conversations, right? Because this is absolutely scratch and claw survival. And it's like literally, I mean, we have a small business as well. And, you know, we're seeing the same things probably you are in a different focus. But it is like, you know, you build out your runway as long as you possibly can, and you take every savings you possibly can. Like you clip it down to the bare bones, just so you can keep the lights on and so you can feed your employees. I mean, that's what it means to own a small business in this environment, I think. And
yeah. And to be honest with you, like the past, you know, years of the way that our industry has been heading, and the way that a lot of industries have been heading, where it's kind of like our market is really overcrowded. There's not enough labor. Labor is really expensive. The living wage, you know, is kind of getting, that number is increasing as the rents go up in any city. And it's kind of like the economics of our business already weren't making a ton of sense to a lot of us.
Right.
And so I think that in many ways that ended up being our boot camp for this. You know what I mean? Where it was like, everyone was already thinking cutthroat at the beginning. And when I say cutthroat, I don't mean that like, I don't mean in competition with each other, because certainly there are people that feel that way. But, you know, I look at my peers who are small business owners in Seattle, who are in the bar and restaurant industry, and I root for all of them.
Right. Absolutely.
You know?
Yeah, no. And I think that's the beautiful thing about the craft cocktails and potentially the bar world over the last 10 years is we're all rooting for each other. You know, we want each other to succeed because it's been so great for all of us to be able to earn a living on something we do. You know, to your point, the cutthroat isn't about me versus you. It's about let's all get through this as much as we can as a community, as a group of people and professionals, and be stronger when we get through the end of it, right? Kind of forged by fire kind of thing.
Absolutely. And I think that a lot of people are going to leave the industry. I know that a lot of restaurants and bars are going to close, and a lot of people are going to lose a lot of money.
Yeah.
I know that there are many bartenders and servers out there right now, and bar managers and bar owners, who are seriously considering like why they do this in the first place. Is there another avenue vocationally that they should be pursuing that would be a little bit smarter? I'm sure a lot of people are getting texts and calls from their mothers saying like, I told you so, you should have finished law school, you idiot.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. It's going to be, I hate the term thinning the herd, but I'm sure that that's going to happen in a lot of major cities.
Well, probably in every industry, right? I think everybody's kind of taking this opportunity to kind of look at what they do, what they love, what they don't love about it, and making potentially another decision. I mean, there's so many people laid off and furloughing that it's only natural, right? So we'll keep our fingers crossed, and hopefully, the ones that are passionate, the ones that really care about customer service and giving a cool environment for people, they'll stay in and be more passionate through this.
I mean, it's all part of your story, and even if you were to lose your business or one of your businesses, or lose your job or something, like that's kind of the way life is. You know what I mean? Right. Like this is a risky business. We've all been kind of going to work for years not knowing how much money we're going to make. I mean, we work for tips. So I think the risk is something that people have never actually had to like compartmentalize and think about specifically. Yeah. But I also think that, again, it's something that we've been conditioned to at least like respond to it well. Yeah. I don't know. I hope I have so many good people working in our bars right now that I'm hopeful that everyone sticks with it as their career. No, absolutely. I'll certainly understand if people are like, hey, screw this, I got to do something else.
Absolutely understood. Right. Absolutely. So you mentioned the cocktail kit, and I kind of want to get back to that because I think your offering is very unique and different. We've already kind of talked about the narrative that you put around each particular drink. Can you tell us a little bit more about what you include in the cocktail kit? And feel free to say no if this is something you don't feel free. Feel like
no, it's all public info. So the way that we do our kits, we offer, and I'll tell you what we do, and then I'll tell you why we do it.
Sure.
Kind of as I go, if that helps. And also, I'm really ADD, so feel free to keep me on track if I get sidetracked.
No worries, man.
We offer 3 to 5 kits a week. Kits being different drinks. And we mix them up a little bit. Our thought there is, if you offer too many drinks, if you offer people too many options, it's my belief in retail that people will end up just thinking too much about kind of like why they're spending this money in the first place. And eventually they'll just be like, I'm just going to not spend money at all. So I think that like giving people a really focused offering is important. Kind of think of the difference between going to an artist that you're interested in listening to on Spotify, and they have 3 albums, that you can choose between, versus if you go and click on Rod Stewart and there's 40 albums, including 10 of which are greatest hits albums. You know what I mean? You're like, where the fuck do I start? Basically. Right. So giving people a digestible amount of information to start with. Then we kind of package it in a way that is thoughtful and succinct. So for us, that is our cocktail mix is just one bag. When we make our drinks, so all of our drinks at Navy Strength, I mean, they're tropical style drinks, and many of them have upwards of, 10, 11, 12 ingredients in them. But the way that we work it in our bar is we have what we call our batch, which is all of the spirits blended together. Then we have what we call our mix, which is all of the sweeteners and purees blended together, which could include like acids. It can include like absinthe or maraschino or bitters or kind of like modifiers like that. And then we have our juice. So really, for an 11 bottle pickup drink, we're only picking up 3 bottles.
Right.
basically what we've done with our cocktail kits is change that into a 2-bottle pickup for the guest. So we're blending the mix. We're blending the mix and the juice together in the correct ratio. And all they have to do is like add booze and shake. So it's really easy. And even like the bitters are mixed in and everything. So that's pretty simple. It's impossible to screw up. We recognize that a lot of people don't necessarily have all the tools that we have. So we take kind of 2 avenues with that. One avenue is, the main thing for us is like, and we say it in our instructions, there are many things in drink making to not be dogmatic about, but one of them that you should be dogmatic about is measuring and making sure that you made the drink properly. And we recognize that a lot of people don't have a jigger at home. So we encourage them we basically give them the milliliters equivalent so that they can just use a measuring cup at home and make it that way. So kind of like understanding where people are. And then the other avenue that we take with that at Rob Roy is we give people bar tools with their kit. So Anu and I used to own a bar tool shop, and we are just flush with shakers and strainers and bar spoons and stuff like that. And we were like, hey, this is a cool way to kind of like, give people some stuff, equip people to be the expert at home and move some product that way. So that's been working too. So we also vacuum seal everything, which works pretty well for us because it's, if you are buying it, we only offer them 2 days a week, but if you're planning on drinking your cocktails, 4 days later, you can just throw it in the fridge. It's totally fine. It's not going to go anywhere. We also vacuum seal our garnishes, which helps just keep those fresh. So we'll like pick some really nice mint sprigs. We will vacuum seal up some flowers or some dehydrated citrus. And we give people a picture of the drink so that they know what it looks like. Which for us is also like, I don't know. I just feel like people are so visual. And the reason that like food and drink has taken off the way that it has, or like nerdy food and drink, is because of things like the Food Network and Bon Appetit and Food and Wine. And those things are all like very visual. You know what I mean? It seems crazy to think that people are watching like as much food television as they are, since you can't eat the damn thing that you're watching people make. You know what I mean? But people are pretty visual that way. So including a picture has been very helpful. Making ourselves available if people have questions. We're just like, hey, we are not, we don't have like a marketing company that runs our Instagram accounts. Like it's just us, like it's me, the person that's sending you this kit. So just give us a shout if you have a question. And occasionally people will do that. For the most part, people just reach out and are like, oh, OMG, it was so good. Thank you. Whatever. But occasionally we'll get people who are like, hey, I'm having trouble like crushing my ice or whatever, and we'll help them kind of troubleshoot stuff like that.
And is your communication, sorry to jump in, but is your communication almost primarily through Instagram? Is that how you guys are kind of fielding your questions?
Yep. Okay. Yeah. And through Facebook a little too, but
sure. Super smart.
Almost
kind of keeping everything on one platform is great.
It's working.
Yeah.
So to sell booze in Washington, you have to also sell food. I mean, it was kind of a loophole for them to be like, I think the intent of what they were saying was for restaurants who are already selling to-go food, this is like extra money that you can make. Well, for us, I mean, Navy Strength is a restaurant, but I don't have a chef who's coming in right now because our chef had a heart attack about 6 months ago.
Oh no.
He's very at risk. So he can't step foot in the building.
Yeah.
He doesn't leave his apartment. So that kind of like screwed that for us. So the way that we do it is we're selling the cocktail kits. If you buy a kit that has spirits in it, we include like what we call a snack in there. So like, last week we did Spam sliders with this pineapple ketchup and some pickled jalapenos and stuff. And it's like on Hawaiian rolls, like it's good. It's good. But it's not like, no one's going to be like, fucking blogging about it or anything.
Right.
This weekend I'm making homemade French onion dip.
Yeah.
Chips and French onion dip. It sounds good.
Oh, it sounds so good.
So uniquely for tiki too, like that style of drink was always associated with food. All the old school tiki restaurants were restaurants.
Yeah.
They were, and it's the kind of drinks where tiki drinks are so communal. Like people are always sitting around the table, and no one's is sitting around the table drinking tiki drinks without some snacks. One, because you're going to fall out of your chair. Two, because it's just a really communal style thing. A tiki bowl is something that you share with people, and the concept of the poo-poo platter is something that people kind of like can share with each other. So we don't do traditional tiki food like that, mostly because I think it's kind of boring and just like played out. And we have a really creative chef who's amazing, but I don't know. I like the fact that tiki and food is so like closely linked. I think that's special.
Yeah, no, that's pretty great. And I could see going down the road of like some really great like chicharrones or something like that. If that theme, or like even like some ridiculous potato chips and French onion dip, like you were mentioning, that'd be cool. That sounds really tasty.
Yeah.
And then you also mentioned that you have just kind of a cheat sheet for the cocktail, like a little backstory and narrative that you put together with a couple of key stories or something with the cocktail as well, right?
Yeah. So we'll kind of like say sort of, if it's a classic drink, like we've done the Saturn, the Zombie, the Mai Tai, the Navy Grog, those classics are those stories are a little bit more well known. So for us, we'll maybe focus a little bit more on technique or like why ours is different. And our drinks, like our classics, really are a little bit different. I mean, there's not that if it ain't broke, don't fix it, but we're creative people, and like our grenadine is very unique. Our falernum is really unique. So our classics taste different than if you were to go into Smugglers or Latitude or like a more traditional like hardline tiki bar. So we focus a little bit more on maybe like making the technique the narrative for those ones.
Sure.
For our house drinks, because those are so like laced with kind of an international narrative, we will just say like kind of a few words about like what inspired the drink. Like we have a drink on our Nordic menu called the Right to Roam, and the right to roam is a concept in Finland that basically anyone can camp on anyone's property as long as they're like respectful. And the idea is that like this land belongs to, even if you own it, it belongs to like all people. And I thought that was really, was a really like powerful concept. So we created this drink, the Right to Roam. And I had gone to Finland last summer with some bartenders and chefs, and we went on this like foraging excursion. And the things we found were juniper and dill and blueberries. And so like that's kind of like the flavor profile that inspired this drink. And we like include that, just a snippet of that story in the description, so people have like an idea of kind of where it's coming from.
That's really cool. Yeah, they kind of get grounded in the story, and then they can kind of extrapolate their own kind of vision of it all once they start enjoying the cocktail. And feel like it's not like
it's not like we were like expecting them to like tweet about it or anything, but it's like giving people a little bit of the broader picture of like the context of the drink. You know what I mean? I think a lot of people out there are making drinks without context, and there's nothing wrong with that, because at the end of the day, they're just freaking drinks. But for us, like we are trying to tell a little bit of a larger story. And that story is that we have a really wide, wonderful world that you can explore. And it's kind of like almost an anti-xenophobe narrative that we give within our bar. That's like, hey, some people might be building walls, but for us, it's more important to actually travel, go meet these people, explore their culture, celebrate their idiosyncrasies as much as we celebrate our own, and expect others to celebrate our own. And that's kind of like the whole arcing narrative of our bar.
Absolutely. And it really kind of fits well with this cocktail kit that you've put together, and being able to communicate that is pretty amazing. So as you kind of have a little bit of history behind you now with this ToGo cocktail program, and you've been watching it kind of happening and unfolding in China at the same time, what are some of the most valuable lessons that you've learned from this whole experience?
I think like one of them is just that people really want to help, from brands kind of like, trying to do whatever they can to help our bar exist, to our guests. I mean, when I thank our guests for coming and purchasing these cocktail kits, they're like, thank you for doing them. Like, we just want to see you guys survive. And this whole experience is really like deepened some of those things. I think also like just that we're all in this together kind of, and that what an ecosystem the restaurant and bar community is. Like, it's not just that there are owners and bartenders and barbacks and servers. There's also a brand rep who works for, works for spirits companies who are trying to get their spirits placed and do education and throw fun events and keep you engaged. There's also a salesperson that works for your distributor who's in charge of, you know, kind of like getting you the right product, keeping you abreast of what's available. And, you know, all of those companies are hurting now too. There's a delivery driver who brings you your actual order. Right. And like, that was one of the things when I called Frank's, our produce company here, and was like, hey, are you guys still delivering? I need some stuff. I'm doing these cocktail kits. And they were like, yes, thank God. Thank you for, you know, like contacting us. And they were like, we had to lay off all of our drivers except for 2. Wow. And we're doing, you know, only doing deliveries a few days a week. And I was like, well, I'm going to, you know, if these are successful, I'm going to, you know, give you as much business as I can. And, and that's been, you know, cool. So for us, but also devastating to know that there are people that are in that position. So despite the fact that restaurants and bars are we're not the most organized and represented organizations. We're all like kind of mavericks and dropouts and, you know, kind of weird characters, I guess. You're
making me smile because you're absolutely, it's so true.
But I don't know that there's a lot of people that, I mean, there's no like delivery drivers. Oh my God, who are the people in politics who lobbyists? There's no delivery driver lobbyists that are like trying to, you know, make things better for them. You know what I mean? So I just think, I don't know. Yeah. Recognizing that we're a part of this ecosystem and also that there are people that are in that ecosystem that have it worse than we do. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's pretty incredible. I was talking to somebody the other day and we were talking kind of, you know, trying to abstractly think about how this thing's going to unfold and all that. We're like, man, if deliveries and delivery drivers stop, that is the lifeblood of this entire economy. Like, you don't get produce, you don't get milk, you don't get eggs to the store. I mean, that's a big hit for everybody.
I think also like just recognizing like the power of the government subsidy. I mean, I don't think that people of my generation and younger really understand that the government is like, milk and eggs are affordable because the government subsidizes them. You know what I mean? Cheese is affordable because the government subsidizes that. So, you know, if you were to ever go to like a really high-end grocery store and get kind of like unpasteurized, just like super amazing milk, you would balk at the price tag because of that. Right. You know what I mean? So I think it's like, it's just opening our eyes up to some of the idiosyncrasies and failures of our system, which I'm sure we could go into why that is, and some of the failures of capitalism in general. But, you know.
Yeah. And not to go on a rant, I feel like everything that we see now is hyper expanded. Like everything's under a magnifying glass now. Like every detail of everything that we do, we just have to put so much more thought in and really kind of like internalize all these things. And I think will be one of the benefits maybe that comes from this, is just people kind of reprioritizing and being a little more thoughtful. But it's pretty incredible to see this at such a large scale.
I think that like it used to be in bars and restaurants. You're 100% right. And I think that's a really important point. I think that in bars and restaurants, you know, people would make little pivots here and there, or like kind of explore kind of changing things up here and there. And they have the freedom and ability to do that. I think right now, the way that a lot of bar and restaurant owners and kind of the surrounding ecosystem of businesses, I think those decision makers are feeling right now like we have to make a step in a direction. We don't know which direction to go necessarily. If we take a step in the wrong direction, it could mean like curtains for our business. Yeah. And so people there's never been so much riding on one or two steps that people make, you know what I mean? Right. So I get why. I mean, in the comments on my Facebook post about the kits, where I kind of laid out everything like our best practices and what we're doing, I saw in a lot of the comments people tagging individuals and saying like, hey, you guys should do this. And then those people saying, oh, I wanted to, but like our bar owner shot it down. Which for me, my instinct is to be like, man, that's a really dumb thing to do. You know what I mean? Like, you could be successful with this if you just kind of like follow the steps, but I don't know their market. I don't know their, like, what their narrative is. I don't know what their equipment is. I don't know, how at risk they are. I don't know if their bar maybe doesn't have enough of a following to think that it's sustainable. Like, there's all kinds of reasons not to do it. Yeah. So I totally get those that aren't, and those that are doing it differently. I mean, there was an article in the Seattle Times today about these cocktail kits being for sale in Seattle. And one of the big people they interviewed was Jamie Boudreau, who owns Canon here in Seattle. And he was like, I need to be able to sell individual cocktails to people, and I can't sell, kits. Like, that doesn't make sense for me. And he's probably right based on the kind of like what they do at Canon. But, for me, it was like, we have to try something. Let's figure out what our limitations are and just grab the bull by the horns and do it. You know what I mean?
See where this ride takes us.
Exactly. I mean, it's funny because, like, so for us, we've been essentially, no pun intended, liquidating all of the spirits kind of like in our cabinet. And my thinking there was all of these bottles of unopened spirits that are sitting here are money that could be in our bank account right now, or could be going to our employees to pay their insurance or their rent. So that's the first thing, was we kind of like worked through all that, and our cupboards are basically bare now. So this week, for the first time, I have to purchase spirits so that we can continue selling the cocktail kits. But for me, part of the challenge of that was, okay, I'm about to do a 5-case drop of Mount Gay rum, but what if the governor says on Thursday that you can't do cocktail kits anymore? You know what I mean? And now I've just like dropped this stuff. Now, fortunately, they've made it legal for us to like send booze back to the distributor too and get our money back. So it's not that much risk, but still, it's like, there's things to consider, and it's not like we have it all figured out and we're going to, be successful for eternity. This is basically like, we figured out a tourniquet, that's helped us limp.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's probably the best thing that we can do. I mean, nobody's going to come out of this richer, right? Or maybe very few people, as far as the bar and restaurant industry goes.
Just Jeff Bezos.
Yeah, right. Yeah, well, there's that. But I think if we can, the more bars and restaurants that can kind of weather the storm and still be open when the gates open again, I think is going to be tremendous for us. And I think that's kind of the long-term vision that many bar owners or small business owners have to approach this kind of scenario under.
Yeah. I mean, we have like, because we have 4 businesses, we're in 4 totally different scenarios, basically. I mean, we have one, like, No Anchor is our beer bar, but it's also like a really high-end restaurant. It's been James Beard nominated a few times. It's like really kind of like next level execution of food. And we don't know what the landscape for that's going to look like when things reopen.
Sure.
Okay. Then one of the places is called Vinny's, which is our natural wine and oyster bar. And it's really small. I mean, it's like 20 seats. And for us, we're like, okay, we can reopen, but we don't know how many people are going to want to go to a small place and feel like confined because they're worried about getting sick.
Crazy. Yeah.
Rob Roy is like, the 3 of the places have the same landlord, but Rob Roy has a different landlord, and like they're kind of, the way that they're all interacting with us as we ask for rent abatement, basically, is completely different. And there are different like hoops that each of the people want us to jump through. We have a 5th business that is kind of in the works. We're opening a brewery on the Seattle waterfront. And I was about, at the time that this all struck, I was about probably 60 to 70% through fundraising for that. And now I have to wait until the dust settles. I have to go back and kind of touch base with all these people and be like, hey, are you still into this? And that's going to be a real challenge. You know what I mean? Like getting, everyone is going to lose money in this scenario, like you said. So I don't know. We have it as good and as bad as probably any other business, certainly in Seattle, but trying to stay positive. And Anu and myself, my wife and I we're not super like business and financial oriented people. We really care about, like, for example, we offer health insurance at all of our places, like at great kind of like harm to the financial, aspect of our business. But for us, that's like a non-negotiable important thing to do. Just as family meal is a non-negotiable important thing that we offer at our places, because we believe in like that these people are our family, and like, of course, you want to feed your family dinner every night. So we're not. I guess all this to say, we're just crazy enough to be kind of like the type of blunt instruments that will like smash through any wall that comes our way. So I'm hopeful that all of our places will reopen.
Cool. And
Gary,
one of the things that you mentioned earlier was kind of the ecosystem, and this will be, I think, one of the last questions I ask. But you mentioned the vendors and kind of the ecosystem that we're operating under. How have that language communication and dialogue between the vendors and you changed, stayed the same? Like, have they offered up any kind of support for you and your cocktail program or anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that like the same as we all have different constraints in being in different states or having different ownership or being in different neighborhoods or whatever, having different equipment, I think all of the brands have different constraints too.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Like they all have, if you work for a multinational corporation, if you work for Pernod Ricard, Diageo, Beam Suntory, Campari, William Grant, those companies have really big resources, and I think a lot is expected of them because of that, but they also have very different leadership, and they have different kind of like people pulling the strings. So they can't all do the same thing. They're also not, they also don't all have the same resources, like some of those companies are much smaller than others. So, everyone's just trying to do their best, and that's what we recognize. We have had some people reach out to us and say like, hey, can we like, give you some money so that you can like buy food to feed like your staff. And for us, we've said no to that so far after consulting our staff, because what we've realized is that most of our staff, went and basically stocked up on food, and has kind of like, we gave them all the food from our restaurant that was kind of like needed to be used or whatever. And so everyone was kind of good right now. When they are going to need that food is in 1 month from now, when everyone's pantries are looking pretty empty. So that's what we told these companies that reached out about that specifically, was like, hey, please do earmark that money so that we can do that, but let's do it in like reconnect 3 weeks from today, and then we'll do it then. So I think it's like, it's a complicated problem. It's not one size fits all. We recognize that the small brands are, one, they don't have the budget or the resources to offer the same thing as the big brands, and they actually just need our support. Right. You know what I mean? So for us, I see a couple bottles of Big Gin on the back bar there. Like Big Gin is, they're a local Seattle company. They were purchased by Hood River Distillers, which is, who owns Clear Creek and some small brands like that. But they're a brand that was started by our friends Ben and Holly. They've worked their freaking butts off as small business owners for many years. And, that's a brand that we really want to support. So, we're buying, it's not much, but we're buying 3 cases of Big Gin this week. And that's what we're including in our gin cocktails this week. So it's like, it's not just about what they can do for us. It's about the ecosystem and like, how can we help each other? And at the end of the day, like, even if our businesses failed, even if we all chose different industries, like Ben and Holly would still be friends of mine. Skip, who owns Letterpress Distilling here, would still be a close friend of mine, even if, none of these scenarios work out. So, it's like, it at least makes you feel good.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I've had the good fortune of meeting Ben and Holly. They did a seminar at our house a couple of years ago, and
that's cool.
They're amazing. They're great people.
They're so great.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, we love their products and stuff. So it's easy.
Oh, Big Gin is so good.
Yeah, it's easy to support them. And I think the last question I have is more around, how can people get in touch with you? How, is there anything that you want to promote on your end? Any word that you want to get out, just, from your side?
I mean, the easiest way to reach me is just through Instagram. It's just at Chris Elford, ELFORD. or you could reach out through the bars, Navy Strength, No Anchor, Vinny's, Rob R, and Rob Roy. Any of those are fine ways of contacting me. I'm pretty, as you can tell, I'm a pretty chatty person, and I try and, depending on how much time I have, really give people the time of day and take them seriously when they reach out about stuff. So, I don't know. I'm always up for meeting new people. I don't know. There's nothing that I want to promote other than just, compassion and support in our industry right now. I know that there's a lot of people hurting. I know that there's a lot of people who are going to lose people close to them through this. I know there's a lot of people who had events that they were really looking forward to. I think of the people from Lush Life who do Camp Run Amok and Portland Cocktail Week, and that's their business. You know what I mean? Their business is gathering hundreds and hundreds of people together. The one thing that you cannot do right now.
Right.
And so you have to kind of just think about the whole landscape and think about what you can do. And at the end of the day, like most of us who are short on resources, and Anu and I can't even apply for unemployment because technically we're just unable to. We are kind of, we're struggling in our own way too. But I think just recognizing that you don't know who's struggling with what, and just like the power of a kind word and the power of kind of a word of encouragement for people is just massive right now. So
yeah, definitely could not agree more on all fronts. I think this is going to be a life-changing event. Before COVID, after COVID, it's going to be a line in the sand for all of us, I think, and it will be a very defining moment in our future. Absolutely. So one last question, and then we'll go. Tips. Do people tip you? Is that still a thing for you guys in your to-go program? And how is it working out if you do?
So we do, if people purchase like cocktail kits, which they can just find a link for in the Navy Strength Instagram bio, there is that process runs through our POS, Toast, and people have been incredibly generous with tipping. Beyond that, like I'm doing this, Punch is doing this Tip Your Bartender series where they have like different bartenders on every day at 2 p.m. I missed it today because I was preparing for this, but I'm going to be on it this Thursday making some drinks, and so that'll be exciting. I'm sure the turnaround on a podcast is longer than that, but I don't know. There's cool stuff happening, and it makes me feel like as long as we don't run out of people doing creative stuff like this, that we're going to be okay as we can be. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Well, Chris, thank you so much for your time, man, and you're sharing all your experiences with us. I know we're all kind of trying to figure out what the new normal is going to look like.
I know.
Hopefully this helps a lot of people kind of keep their doors open, feed their staff, and, do whatever they can to kind of get through this. So definitely appreciate it.
And for your listeners, if you're ever in Seattle, when this all blows over, if you're ever visiting Seattle and want to come say hi and have a drink, certainly reach out.
Absolutely. Cool. Well, next time we go up to Seattle, we'll definitely connect because it sounds like a great place to go grab a drink and food.
Hell yeah. Yeah. The bars are all next door to each other too. So it's kind of one-stop shopping.
So what you're saying is pub crawl is what's going to happen. I love it. Well, cool, Chris. Thank you again. You've been so generous with your time, and we really do appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah. Hell yeah. Thank you.
So thanks again to Chris Elford from Navy Strength for sharing all of his experience and expertise with this new setup about to-go cocktails. As I mentioned in the beginning of the video, please check with your local laws and your state laws around to-go cocktails. This is not something that's offered to everybody, and I would hate to see anybody get in trouble for implementing a to-go cocktail program. But once again, thanks to Chris for his insights. So we'll have some more podcasts for you in the future, and hopefully we'll have some more insights like this one to help businesses and bartenders kind of weather the storm of COVID in the future. So stay tuned for those. And I hope everyone is staying happy and healthy and safe. Cheers.